Well, well, well. Hello, welcome to the Bionicle Inspiration series. Today, what we're going to be doing is, well, what we always do. We're going to spotlight Bionicle MOCs from across the Bionicle community, and we're going to talk about the techniques that they're doing, relate it back to a specific theme, and just in general share some building tips and tricks to help inspire you to build your own cool MOCs. And today's topic is going to be CCBS, which stands for the Character Creature Building System, which is essentially more or less the sort of pieces that started out in Hero Factory 2.0 and kind of continued all the way to the end of construction with your Star Wars Ultra Build, Tsushima stuff, Bionicle G2, and most of Hero Factory as well. So pretty awesome looking kind of system here. It's kind of built off of the premise of being a sort of bone-like structure or kind of frame that you put armor over the top of, and then on top of that armor you can customize it even further with kind of weapons, additional armor, or other kind of cool stuff as well. So it was always a really unique and interesting system. It actually began with a fair bit of controversy at the time. I remember people were not excited about it, but nowadays it's pretty well loved and is incredibly versatile, and there's a lot of great stuff that you can do with it. So wanted to specifically focus on that today. And hey, if you like the topic of CCBS, stay tuned later this week for another CCBS related video, which is not the Bionicle Inspiration series, but is very deeply related to Bionicle. So get ready for that. Anyway, let's begin talking about some CCBS related MOCs and see the different ways that you could use the CCBS system of building and the different pieces that relate to it as well. The first MOC is by Victor, and this is called, I'm going to say this wrong, Tetlakh Hek Plumen. Yep, you know what? You can read it and you can pronounce it yourself. Try it yourself. It's very difficult. I'm sure much like me, you'll struggle. But regardless of the name being hard to pronounce, it's a cool looking name, and this is a cool looking MOC. So immediately what grabbed me about this is the beautiful spring green on this character here. So spring green is a color that's not as common with your CCBS. To my knowledge, it only really came in this one Elves set, which I think is called like the Goblin King Dragon or something like that. And, you know, you got some spring green and a few other things like the Skull Spiders, and they're scattered here and there, but it's not that common. But it's such a lovely color as well. And we might see another spring green MOC later in this video. It's a gorgeous color. And I think that's something that's so interesting about CCBS is there were a lot of fantastic colors that it came in, but also CCBS did appear in non-Bionicle Hero Factory related sets. And I'm not just talking about your Star Wars Ultra Builds and Tsushima stuff. No, like this appeared in an Elves set. Some of the Hulkbuster sets had like dark red CCBS armor in it, you know? So it's always interesting to see CCBS, you know, kind of cropping up in different sets here and there. You know, you kind of sometimes see it these days, not as common, but it's not impossible to see. So, you know, definitely pay attention to some of those weird and obscure Lego sets that did have more unique colors or shapes or sizes or whatever in them, because, you know, it's always cool to play around with the unique stuff there. So I always enjoy that. The kind of main concept I wanted to talk about with this MOC today is the fact that CCBS is perfect for just making a really kind of standard humanoid build, and from there you can kind of advance it even further. So here it's, you know, your typical humanoid. Of course, his legs do, you know, sort of have sort of multiple joints that a typical leg design doesn't always have. Sort of has that additional joint for the knee there and sort of bends in some fashion. But for the most part, this is a humanoid character. But then added on top of that is an additional pair of arms. And this sort of weird egg thing on his back as well. I don't know how to describe that exactly, but it looks cool. So by all means, if you're looking at just building a very standard, typical humanoid-looking character, your typical human, your typical hero, your typical Toa, whatever, just use CCBS. Use your typical kind of prefab limbs, the typical bone structure, add the armor on top, because it's perfect to do it. It gets the job done, and it's fairly sort of straightforward and simple. And again, from there, you can always branch out from a really simplistic build and expand upon it and customize it even further, see what you can do, you know? I think this is a great example of that. The forearm design here is awesome. I love his the weapons as well, with that lovely little pop of red there. Just really shines, really makes it stand out. It's lovely. And I imagine this sort of forearm design, I imagine he's put a torso piece, the sort of typical like Hero Factory CCBS torso element, and sort of place that over the back there and kind of use the different connection points from that to give it an additional set of arms. I would guess. Might be wrong. Who knows? I can't really see from some of these pictures exactly how he did that. but it's still a nice looking design. So yeah, even if it's something as simple as that, adding an additional pair of arms, sort of changing up the legs a little bit to be a little bit different from your typical leg design, or adding some kind of crazy weird thing on the back like that, I think little stuff like that really does go a long way and can take a really sort of stock standard build and make it even more impressive, you know? So it's the little things. And I think CCBS is perfect for that. It really is designed to be something you kind of layer on top of each other and expand on and customize even further. So I think that's perfect. Not that Bionicle wasn't really made for that as well, but I think CCBS is perfect for really, really heavy customization in that sense. Plus, it's really kind of straightforward and easy to do. So maybe if you're a little bit more green, you're a little bit more new to building Bionicle and CCBS related stuff, it's a good starting point for you, I think. So I love that there. Also great to see some of these bone here. They're actually bone-shaped bones. You know, you see them on the upper arms there and also on the lower arms. They're kind of all throughout this mock, really, even on the legs. Those are, of course, from the Skull villains from the last few waves of Bionicle G2. And they're great, you know, little stuff like that, which can customize it even further instead of just, you know, the typical armor that you add armor on top of, you know, or the bones that you add armor on top of, excuse me. But anyway, this is, I think, a brilliant example of a very sort of stock standard build, which has still been very nicely customized and just looks lovely with some great colors too. So that's it for Victor's mock. Let's move over to the next mock here. This is Aurora System Works, and this is Sinuza. So I wanted to specifically focus on how you can also integrate CCBS with just your typical Bionicle parts. Because sure, it's nice to just exclusively build with, you know, being very heavily CCBS, but if you can use some of the other Bionicle pieces in your collection, why not? Because they flow perfectly one into the other. So let's spotlight some of those specific pieces here where that is the case. Of course, the head design uses a lot of CCBS, using the Scorpio headpiece there, and just a typical kind of silver armor piece. Nice looking head design, or I always like it when people kind of flip masks like that, because, you know, if a mask looks good from one angle, try it from another angle. It might look even better or different or just more unique, who knows, and it's a nice design. The arms here are fairly simple in how they've been built. It's just your typical bones and the armor on top of them. So pretty stock standard CCBS, but it gets the job done. They don't really need to be anything further from that. But the torso is where this really shines, and this is where we start to see a bit more of the Bionicle pieces thrown in here and there. So a bunch of these Kuroda kind of weapon pieces from the Hero Factory set Kuroda. Not exclusively Bionicle, I guess I mixed up my terms there. But it's not technically CCBS, because that very first wave of Hero Factory was more sort of in line with your Bionicle style pieces than it was with Hero Factory 2.0 when it started to get into CCBS. So technically that doesn't count. But man, it looks really nice, doesn't it? It sort of nicely flows in with this sort of almost like S-shaped body design, more sort of serpent-like in nature. Just sort of, I don't know, rounds off the tail really nicely, sort of creates a bit, some like dynamic angles on the torso there. And some nice shoulder pads too. Very stylish, very cool. And then another Hero Factory piece thrown in there as well is the Bulk 1.0 leg armor piece there. I like that this creates this, I don't know, weird sort of like torso, like backwards hunch. I don't know what you would refer to that as. A mono boob, perhaps. Whatever it is, it's cool, it's unique, it's different. I actually really like that there. So I don't know, the more I look at this, the more my argument doesn't make any sense at all. There's not really any Bionicle pieces in this, but there are some pieces in there from the first wave of Hero Factory, which again isn't technically CCBS. So still a nice example where it's sort of perfectly integrating some of those pieces. A little bit more subtle, but it is integrating them, and it's working really nicely there. So that's cool. The sort of body shape of this, I imagine, again, hard to tell from these pictures, it looks like it's essentially just maybe one layer, maybe two layers of the CCBS bone pieces there, and he's just armored them over the top like that. So it's essentially just one straight line that's kind of been curved and then armored up. I like that. If that is how that's done, that's how I imagine it's been built. It's just a pretty effective, simple way of doing it. And I think that's, again, like I've said, one of the joys of CCBS is how easy it is to customize stuff and to come up with more unique body shapes and designs there, whether that is a sort of serpent tail or using Hero Factory bone pieces to create the sort of frame here. I really do like that. Final little detail, and then we'll talk a little bit more about interesting body shapes and things like that, is these axes. So they've been used here as actual like axe heads for sort of like interesting kind of, maybe even like butterfly knives, I don't know, whatever you want to refer to them as. Some sort of cool looking weapon there. But those exact same pieces have been used as a sort of interesting like headdress thing, as like almost like a crown almost for this fantastic head design. Those are really cool pieces. And again, technically, they are CCBS. These came on a variety of the different Chima Ultra Build sets. And they were used as, axes and all sorts of different weapons here and there. So really, really cool piece. A little bit more obscure because those Chima sets weren't really released everywhere in the world. I never got them in Australia. I don't know if they came out in the US. I want to say it was just Europe that they came out. There's some weird release with the second wave of those. So they're a bit more of an obscure piece. You may not have seen it before. You may have, who knows. But it's still a lovely piece, and I think it complements this mock very, very well. Let's move on to the next mock now. This is by Rondo Productions, and this is CCBS Dino Mock. So I was saying before about sort of unique body shapes, you don't have to always build a humanoid. You can perfectly build a dinosaur or any other kind of shape like this. And I think that's something that's very kind of important to note is that, CCBS works very well for building kind of animals and monsters and different things like this. So, yeah, fantastic. I love this leg design, that sort of curvature to it, which is a bit more fitting for the depiction of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Great to see that awesome little foot design there, just using your typical prefab foot, but the inclusion of the big old sort of toe claw thing there, very fitting and very nice. But my favorite detail is the head design here, using the crocodile headpiece, which looks like a dinosaur now, and combining it with one of the sort of like kaiju invasion from below monster sort of jaw pieces. I think it's a fantastic combo, and it never really dawned on me that those two pieces probably would actually fit together, and they fit together lovely here. So fantastic sort of combination of pieces there. And I think just that in general, the combination of those two pieces from two very different waves and even themes of construction there of CCBS is the fact that you can very easily sort of swap pieces around and have interesting combinations of pieces. Most of your CCBS armor parts have that sort of interesting two lightsaber rod kind of connection, so you can sort of place armor over the top of it. Or in this case here, we have these fur pieces in dark bluish grey on the back and on the leg there. Those are just inserted with that exact same connection onto CCBS armor. I think it's really interesting to note that there's so many pieces that can be sort of swapped out or interchanged over the top of that. You could even put actual lightsaber rods in there or other kind of bar elements from your system and other stuff. There's a whole variety of ways that you can sort of swap out different pieces, add it over the top, all of that. That's just the nature of CCBS, which I think is so helpful. So by all means, if you're doing that, if you've got a bunch of CCBS, just honestly, just kind of play around, just sort of shove pieces together, see what sort of stuff naturally complements things, or I don't know, does this insert into this? Hey, it does. Who'd have thought, And I think CCBS is just a great thing to be able to kind of play around with and really just effectively customize. So I really like that. But yeah, just in general, a lovely looking little dinosaur mock here and using just a whole bunch of CCBS and using it very well, which is great. Nicely done. Let's move over to the next mock now. This is by Patrick Biggs, and this is Eyevan. So I think what I wanted to specifically focus on with this mock is how CCBS is being used to create a very interesting kind of like segmented design, little bits of part spamming thrown in there as well. So when we look at sort of the main body here, there's just these kind of repeated segments of this sort of shoulder armor, which is actually also being used on the shoulders here, and more beautiful spring green armor shells as well, probably tied in with one or two different layers of just your typical CCBS bone elements there that form the sort of bulk of the kind of tail and the upper body as well. Awesome design. It's very effective, and it's essentially just the same segment repeated multiple times. And I think CCBS is perfect for that sort of body segmentation like that. For a snake or for a more sort of bug-like design in this nature, it's perfect. I sort of touched upon it before. I think CCBS is just so perfect for creating animals or monsters, or more specifically, more sort of streamlined designs like a snake or I don't know, like a centipede or a caterpillar or something like that. It really is perfect for that. So if you're looking to do some more kind of part spamming techniques, much like this, just that repeated segment design like that, just really repeating those pieces over and over again to create a lovely looking design, CCBS is the perfect thing to do that with. So it's really cool. Here we can see another piece that exists in that spring green color, these slightly larger claw pieces in spring green. I don't actually know where those came from. I don't think it was that spring green dragon set, excuse me. I don't know where this came from. I'm actually not sure. I'd have to look that up, but I'm sure someone in the comments can let me know. Regardless, though, another lovely piece that I believe originated in Invasion from Below. I don't know. Again, I don't know where it came in spring green, but it comes in black and a few other colors as well. I think it comes in like silver and dark bluish gray, I want to say. Anyway, besides the point, it's a lovely piece there, and it forms this nice looking kind of pincer design here, which is great, especially for this more kind of bug-like design. The eye design, the head design is also really cool, using these lime ball joints here to form these big old bug eyes. That's fantastic. And I love the integration of a few different system pieces too, specifically on the tail and on the legs, using these very large kind of body parts from different, like dinosaurs and other sets. And a bunch of them came in the original Aragog set from Harry Potter. These are great pieces, and I think they perfectly integrate in with CCBS as well, because CCBS, the textures of it naturally are often very, very smooth and organic looking. So sort of incorporating it in with those body part pieces like that, these animal tails, whatever you want to refer to them as, is just such a nice design, because the textures and the general sort of like shape of them, they flow nicely one into the other. So if you're looking for that sort of like consistent texturing on your mock, which this mock I think does that well, there's this lovely sort of smooth organic bug-like design to this, and those body part pieces there perfectly complement that. So yeah, by all means, your CCBS is often very smooth, so look for other smoother pieces that can complement it well. And thankfully, a lot of your typical Lego system parts, there's a few different pieces that naturally complement that well. So it's a good design to be able to match with other pieces. You know, your typical Bionicle is often very, very sort of I don't know, like mechanical in design, especially like G1. There's a lot of sort of like rigid sort of like textures to it, or sort of like a geary kind of look to it, which can be a little bit more difficult to pair other pieces with. But I think CCBS naturally lends itself to complementing other pre-existing pieces. So if you're looking for consistent texturing, it's the way to go, and it's an easy way to go, which is cool. So love this mock here. Let's move over to the next mock. This is by Just Torp, and this is Captain Haddock. Of course, he is from Tintin, if you're familiar with that. So I think another thing that CCBS is just perfect for is creating a very humanoid-looking design. And we can see that here on this, specifically on the arms and the shoulders there, and even sort of towards the top of the torso as well. All those different CCBS armor pieces there work perfectly at conveying the sort of, I don't know, suit jacket or kind of captain's jacket that he's wearing here. And it kind of perfectly matches the sort of body shape that you would expect to see for arms, which is perfect. And I think a lot of the CCBS armor is kind of really designed to mimic, you know, the look of, you know, arms and legs, because that's what the armor is being used for, isn't it, in the original sets. So it's fitting. Makes sense, right? So you may as well use that sort of stuff to perfectly mimic arms or other sort of limbs on a humanoid character. So yeah, it works well for monsters. It works well for you know, creatures and other animals and things. But it also works perfectly at achieving that beautiful organic shaping for a humanoid character, which has been very effectively done here. I love that. In general, this mock is brilliant. I love the inclusion of the little pipe accessory that he's got there. Don't smoke, kids. The arm design, no, not arm design, the hand design. Always confuse my arms and my hands. I don't know what goes on in my brain when I'm talking about those, but the fingers, the hand, the flesh, the tan there. Beautiful looking fingers and hands and all that. And a great head design too, perfectly capturing that beard and just a great expression, big old nose and stuff like that. It's awesome. I also enjoy the fact that this is just a bust. He could have very easily built the full body, you know, legs down and everything, but it works perfectly as just being a sort of, you know, bust, sort of waist up in that sense. It's beautiful, and I think this would look lovely on your desk or as a display piece on a shelf or something like that. So it's a mock that really certainly shines and looks cool. Another little detail here that I love is on the torso, we can see what kind of looks like an anchor, and that's actually the sort of spruce that comes on the wands on the Harry Potter set. So he's taken those wands out, he's kept that spruce, it's still technically Lego, and he's placed them on there very nicely to look like an anchor. It's a really fun little detail there, I love that. And finally, then we'll move on to the next mock. I love all of the Technic panel pieces that have been used there in blue to make up the sort of undershirt there, the sort of turtleneck that he's wearing there. It's awesome. It's a lovely way of doing that, and it perfectly complements the rest of the CCBS that's primarily on the arms there. So, hey, you can even use Technic, your more Technic panels and different things to perfectly complement your CCBS. What can't CCBS do? I may as well be friggin' selling CCBS sets for Lego. I'm complimenting it like a madman today, but I wish this was sponsored by Lego, but it's certainly not. I just think CCBS is very good, and there's a lot of great ways we can use it, and that's what we're talking about today. So, yeah, a lot of good ways we can do that there. Next mock now, this is by Pohaturon, and this is called Nimbus. So another thing I wanted to sort of spotlight with CCBS is how effectively you can use it to create a more sort of like agile, kind of nimble, or Nimbus in this sense, look for a mock. Typically, like I said, the textures of CCBS are very, smooth, agile, sort of free-flowing and organic, which can maybe convey a sort of sense of like speed or just sort of like quick moving or something like that. I think this mock is a great example of that. The sort of bulk use of the CCBS there, like I said, smooth and agile, and that sort of is reflected with this sort of like speedster look of this character. The fact that he has wheels for feet, which it's awesome. They kind of like swap out, and they can actually be feet that he can walk around with, or he can sort of tilt them backwards, and he has like kind of wheel feet, so he's some sort of like, I don't know, professional racer or something like that. It's cool. It's awesome. It's a great design. And I love that. I love the fact that the actual character design of this is reflected within the textures. And what's the best way to do that? Like I said, with your CCBS. So yeah, have a think with that when you're using CCBS. Is there a way that the textures of it or the general kind of look of the pieces can kind of convey, I don't know, something about the character in this sense, a sense of speed or agility? But I don't know, maybe you want to use CCBS to convey maybe a sort of really clean, polished, robotic look that doesn't necessarily have a sense of like speed to it, but it could just be, I don't know, maybe like a war machine of some sort that's, or something like in the Portal games, perhaps some of the different robot designs and GLaDOS and stuff like that would perfectly fit with using some CCBS for that. So yeah, there's different ways that you could interpret it there, but that of course lies in your ballpark when you're building whatever it is you're building. Everyone's gonna be building something that's completely different from someone else in that sense, but you just gotta find the right pieces that convey what you want to convey, right? And there's a lot of stuff that CCBS conveys, so definitely have a think about that next time you use it, I suppose. Some other stuff on this mock that is awesome. I already spoke about the leg design there, but I really do like that. It's awesome. The color scheme is nice too. The white, the teal, the yellow, beautiful. And just the little hints of yellow too, just using those washer pieces in yellow there, and just sort of scattering them throughout the mock. It's gorgeous. It's really cool. I also enjoy the hand design here, using some of those fairly old hand pieces that came on the Toa Mata in teal. And then just nicely inserting those sort of posable fingers around it there. It's a gorgeous looking arm design, or hand design. I did it again. See, I did it again. My bad. But yeah, it is a nice hand design, and this is a nice mock that uses CCBS fairly well. On to the final mock now. This is by Jayfa, and this is called Voidwalker. So some of the principles of this have kind of been covered in the other stuff, but it's Jayfa, so he's doing it in a very, very dignified, beautiful way. So, like I said, CCBS is perfect for your more sort of organic, natural animal looks. And it's also really good for your part spamming because, like we can see here, the bulk of this back design here is just these repeated small white Hero Factory armor pieces. And it's gorgeous. And also just look at the kind of like curvature of that back design as well. Just this sort of beautiful, almost sort of like hump to it. And the way it sort of beautifully flows into the neck. And even the way it flows into the different limbs and the tail as well. Like I said, there's something just so organic and smooth and just sort of, I don't know, mystical about it. There is this very sort of mystical quality to this character, whether that's the beautiful color scheme, the really abstract head design, or the, I think just sort of the rough shape of this being very sort of free-flowing and swirling, and I know it's almost sort of like smoke-like or very kind of like Art Nouveau, and the sort of beautiful kind of free-flowing lines and things like that. It's gorgeous. So it's really lovely to see CCBS being used very, very well here to convey this, I don't know, this just gorgeous sort of ethereal look to this character, and this very, very organic, beautiful shaping on the back and everything. It's fantastic. So I love on the legs here as well. It's your typical kind of prefab stuff here, just putting the bones in and armoring it over the top. There's nothing super complex about it inherently. It's fairly sort of stock standard and easy to reproduce. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It still looks gorgeous. And I love too how it sort of flows down on the lower legs here to unarmored CCBS bones. There's no reason you have to armor those, because there, to me, it looks a little bit more sort of like horse-like, and I don't know, it's just a very unique design, and just ending it there with these sort of hooves, which is the armor pieces there, just sort of flipped in that sense. It's gorgeous. So I love the way that those legs sort of transition down, the colors of it. It's a fantastic mock, and I love that sort of abstract nature of that head. I briefly touched on that a second ago, but all those different feather pieces, the fact that the head itself is just that black shoulder armor piece there. There's no sort of discernible eyes or mouth. It's just this sort of void almost, which I guess is fitting of the name. So yeah, it's just a really unique and different way of doing that head, and it just works perfectly. So love your work, Jayfa, and this is a great use of CCBS, and you know what? It was a great use of CCBS all throughout this episode. So that's kind of my aim with this episode, is to kind of cover a whole bunch of different ways that people have used CCBS, and focus on all the different things that they were doing there. So hopefully of all these different mocks that we showed off today, one or two of the different things that people were doing can maybe give you some tips and tricks and some ideas for the next time you use CCBS in one of your upcoming mocks. So hopefully this inspired you. That's always our goal here today. And by all means, let me know if it did. If you're planning on building something, or you've just finished building something, or you're going to be building something as a result of this, by all means, let me know. Reach out to me on social media, and I'd happily see what you've built. And if you want to reach out to me on social media, there's links in the description below to all of my social media. I'm Ben Cossy on pretty much anything, so you can search me up there and I'll be there. Whether that's my Instagram, Facebook, or Flickr, I've got some of my own mocks over there. Or feel free to chuck me a message on one of those places and let me know what's what. But if you want to submit your mocks to the show, you can only do that through the submission email that's currently on your screen, but it's also in the description below. Send me some pictures, send me some info, whatever you want, put it in that email and send it to me, and I'll consider it for the next episode, or not necessarily the next episode, might be a little bit later down the line, but I'll for sure put it on the list. But of course, your patience is key, because there is certainly a lot of submissions that I have to work through. But speaking of submissions, the next episode will be a fan-submitted mocks episode. So, hey, if you've got something to submit, now's the time, because next week it'll be a fan-submitted mocks episode. But I do tend to put submissions throughout all the different episodes, so you don't have to just submit it for that one, don't you worry. And finally, if you want to see some more from these fantastic builders today, there are links in the description to all the mocks that you saw today. So by all means, click on those links, check out some of the stuff these builders have done, or maybe leave a comment on their mocks and let them know, hey, I really like what you did, because I'm sure they'd appreciate that. And I'd appreciate it if you did that for them. It's just a nice thing to do. But thank you very much for listening and watching this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. I'll see you in the next one. And like I said, stay tuned for later this week, because there'll be an extra special video coming out real soon, which I'm pretty proud of, and I think it's pretty good. I think you'll very much enjoy it. And it's related to CCBS. That's always good. Thank you, and good night. Happy building, and bye for now.